How's everybody doing? All right, so we're gonna watch this video here together. This is a public service announcement that I was a part of, and I'm very excited to share with you. All right.
When you work late nights in dark, repulsive conditions, you probably expect to get paid. They don't. There are thousands of hard-working, underpaid men and women in your city right now. They're called musicians. Any given night of the week, they put themselves on the line for you and your drunk friends. The problem? You're not even there. The beer he got paid with tonight will never keep him warm. That guitar she still owes 12 payments on will never love her back. You can help. Go to your local dive bar right now. Pay the cover charge. Sit down with one of these outcasts and put yourself in their shoes. Take one home. Hell, take two if you want. Support local music. Sleep with a musician tonight. Without you, all we have left are ballads.
The United Federation of Troubadour Whores. Sorry. So that was a great product to be a part of. Pure gold, absolutely. So Kelly, who is my neighbor and one of my favorite humans, had this project. They had to do a public service announcement when she was in film school, and everyone did public service announcements that were like, here's why capitalism is great. And Kelly's was like, here's mine about the United Federation of Troubadour Whores, which is I think a little bit more fun. Definitely just a rad human being, and she called me up and was like, would you be a part of this? And I was 100% in. I want to talk about heartbeat bills, which is probably a weird conversation to have, but they're stupid and evil. So first off, let me just get it out of the way. I am a terrible, monstrous leftist, and I think that things like allowing abortion are good. Allowing people to have abortions is, that's why pencils have erasers. I'm being spurious when I say that. But an abortion is like having a baby is a thing. I've had 4 of them, I know. And if somebody isn't ready for that thing, then they should have the option to not have that thing. We expect that the appropriate response is carry it to term and then give it up for adoption. But adoption, orphanages are full. I just think that someone should have the choice to make that decision. And in America, Roe v. Wade, I can't remember the name of the Canadian law, but we have a Canadian law that's somewhat similar, essentially guarantees access to abortions. And naturally, this doesn't flow with what the conservative agenda wants, right? The Christian conservatives. They really care about fetuses, and then they stop caring until you are a member of the party. Heartbeat bills, there's been a huge number of similar kinds of legislation over the years since Roe v. Wade went through in the States. There's been rules about the dimensions that are required for abortion clinics and things like that make it so that existing abortion clinics have to shut down and that they can't get approval for new abortion clinics, things like that, which essentially limits access without limiting access. The heartbeat bills, I think, are really interesting. So if you're not familiar, let's do some looking at the heartbeat bills together. Heartbeat bill, look at that right there. So we're just gonna use the Wikipedia as a introduction. So, a controversial form of abortion restriction legislation in the United States, which makes abortions illegal as soon as the embryonic fetal heartbeat can be detected. So, 2013, North Dakota became the first state to pass a heartbeat law. It was ruled unconstitutional under the precedent set by Roe v. Wade. Several states proposed heartbeat bills in 2018, 2019, and 2021. In 2019, such bills passed in Ohio, Georgia, Louisiana, Missouri, Alabama, and Kentucky, all of which lie either partly or entirely in the Bible Belt. Heartbeat laws in Iowa, Kentucky, and Mississippi were invalidated by courts. According to CNN, heartbeat bills may be unenforceable under Roe, but abortion opponents are hoping that legal challenges will serve as a vehicle for the Supreme Court to eventually overturn the Roe ruling. So that's the whole thing here. This is not about actually, the heartbeat doesn't matter. What matters is that we are trying to find new ways to overturn Roe v. Wade. Heartbeat bill is a real tricky one. So the argument is that you can hear a heartbeat and therefore it's a living creature who deserves respect and love, which again, not really how the conservatives treat living creatures, but okay. Let's just see what fetal heartbeat says here. Prenatal development of the heart that begins with the formation of two endocardial tubes managed from the which merge to form the tubular heart, also called the primitive heart tube. The first functional organ in vertebrate embryos in the human beats spontaneously by week 4 of development. So we're talking about a tubular heart. We're not even talking about like the heart. We're talking about something that pulses. This is the action that means it's alive. I think that's what's the term for it? A crock of shit. They should pass a heartbeat law for any and all future politicians. They should pass a heartbeat law that says you have to prove that you're actually capable of having a beating heart before we elect you. Because these people are heartless. Ha ha ha. The thing about the heartbeat law that's stunning to me is it opens a really weak, spurious series of potential arguments or debate points about it. Is it unreasonable if you can detect a heartbeat that other laws would apply? So, for example, and I'm not trying to. I am, I guess, doing a bit of a slippery slope, but if a heartbeat is detected, this tubular pulse thing, is that at that point, if you have a drink of alcohol, are you contributing to the delinquency of a minor? Based on the quantity of alcohol absorbed by the fetus as a proportion to the overall size of the fetus, I think that this would be the equivalent of a lot of drinking going to a fetus. So does that mean that any pregnant Republican woman, whether she knows it or not, is 4 weeks pregnant and has a glass of Chardonnay, my favorite wine because the word contains the word hard-on inside of it, does that mean she's guilty of contributing to the delinquency of a minor? If somebody has a cigarette when they're pregnant, are they chemically attacking the living, breathing offspring? Or is it just a bullshit argument presented by bullshit people to try and undermine an existing reasonable thing? That's my take on it. I think that abortion is a net positive. Not necessarily that like all babies should be aborted. I'm sure people will hear what I'm saying and be like, oh, he wants to abort all children and all life. Not the case at all. But what I'm saying is having the option to decide whether or not you want to have a child is, I think, important. The argument that like, well, if you don't want to have a baby, then don't have sex is a stupid argument because I don't know if you know this, people do have sex even without wanting to make babies. I've done that. See, I wouldn't have a problem with a heartbeat clause for abortions if testing, the procedures, blah, 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 were all free and readily available. As it stands where we are now, it's just a measure to restrict access to a thing that wouldn't be necessary in the first place if the material needs of people were met. I do agree to a degree. My problem is that the heartbeat bill is intended to just move the bar back far enough that, like I just brought up the thing and it said that it can be detected at 4 weeks. Most, I think, of the heartbeat bill legislations are focused on 5 weeks of pregnancy. And a lot of people don't know that they're pregnant by 5 weeks. So I personally think that's a sneaky way of making it so that people are trapped into having a baby be born and all that stuff. I definitely agree that testing and et cetera should be freely available. I have no problem with the idea that a woman who thinks she's pregnant wanting a pregnancy test should be able to get that free of charge. Partly because I'm Canadian and partly because I have a heart beating in my chest that's a human one. I simply don't understand how any society would not allow people access to what I would consider basic healthcare. Finding out if you're pregnant is basic healthcare. This is probably going to make me go all like UBI and full leftist and stuff, which I'm 100% okay with doing because that's me. Putting an arbitrary time limit is sus. I agree there. Just another thing we're asking women to do around their sexuality. Got to get a test after you've had sex every time. Sounds lame. I definitely agree. I think if you think about like the way that we approach this, it's literally putting all the onus on women, and it's also very much like, what if you do a pregnancy test and it doesn't detect the chemicals, but you're pregnant, and you're like, oh, okay, cool, I'm safe, and then it turns out you aren't, and now you've crossed this arbitrary line. I'm all for the idea that there is such a thing as too late for an abortion unless it's medically required. They're a lot of the times they break it up by trimester. So your first trimester abortion is a reasonable thing, and anything beyond the first trimester is largely around the safety of the delivery for the mother, and similar sorts of things. I'm not opposed to putting that kind of a limit in or maintaining that kind of a limit. At the end of the day, I still feel like if you've been pregnant for 6 months and you're not into it, and you don't want this anymore, like why do I, as John Q. Public, have the right to say, no, suck it up, Buttercup, you're having that baby whether you like it or not? Like, this is a human being's body, and I do really see a difference between a thing that's gestating and a living human. Where does that line exist? I don't fucking know. I am not an expert, but I do believe that people's circumstances can materially change, and maybe let's just say you find out. Let's say that magic number is 8 weeks. We say, okay, 8 weeks is going to be when you now have to have a decision in place about having that baby or not. Cool. At 8 weeks, maybe you're 100% okay with the idea, and then maybe your entire world falls apart the following week, and you're like, you know what? I can't do this. I just lost my job. My partner is no longer in the picture. There's no way that I can reasonably afford to do this, and I can't get another job because employers are looking at me and going, oh, but you're pregnant. You're going to be out of here in a few months, so no, we're not going to hire you. Which I think is a fairly common perspective among employer types. Ooh, thunderstorm happening. Nice. That's awesome. This is life on the prairies. Why is it that you've crossed this imaginary line and now we have to protect the thing that's growing inside you over you? Because again, we're talking about, when I say protect, I don't necessarily mean like physical health, but also the overall person's ability to sustain and to survive and have a decent quality of life. State control over your body isn't about the rights of the fetus. It's about controlling the human or appealing to the shithead voters who keep you in power. Pretty much anything about but the fetus, and the side benefit is a further crowded, isolated, fearful population you can further exploit. I definitely agree. I heard once, and this may not be true, so please do not assume that I am speaking of absolute fact stuff here. But I remember having a conversation when I was in college in one of my classes, and we were talking about Romania. I think it was Romania. Ceaucecu. Who was that dictator person? I'm just going to quickly Google Romania. Ceaucecu. I know I spelled that entirely wrong. Oh, trial and execution of Nicolae and Elena Ceaucecu. I think that is the people I'm referring to. So, yeah, Nicolae Ceaucecu. The story, as I heard it, was that one of the things he did initially was passed rules, like early in his tenure as dictator for life, passed rules that blocked abortion so that women could not have abortions, and instead what ended up happening was a huge amount of babies were left up for adoption. On top of that, There was all kinds of war and awful things that were happening in Romania at the time, and so a lot of people were dying, and their children were going into orphanages, and the children were raised in these Romanian orphanages. I remember hearing about Romanian orphanages. Let me just see if I can quickly find Romanian orphanage. Romanian orphans. We'll just do that. Let's just bring up Wikipedia so I can see. Why is that fucking saving as instead? That was weird. Don't do that. Romanian orphans. Okay, let me switch this over. Where the fuck am I? Browser. There we go. All right, so the standard of living for Romanian orphans is still problematic despite vast improvements since their conditions were leaked to the West after the fall of the communist government in 1989. Under Nicolae Ceaucecu, both abortion and contraception were forbidden. Ceaucecu believed that population growth would lead to economic growth. In December 1966, Decree 770 was enacted, which banned abortion except in cases in which the mother was over 40 years of age or already had 4 children in care. Birth rates especially rose during the years of 1967, 68, 69. By 77, people were being taxed for being childless. Children born in these years are popularly known as, I'm not going to try and pronounce that, from the diminutive of the Romanian language word decret, meaning decree. This increase in the number of births resulted in many children being abandoned in orphanages, which were also occupied by people with disabilities and mental illnesses. These vulnerable groups were subjected to institutionalized neglect, physical and sexual abuse, and drug use to control behavior. That sounds about in keeping with what we always seem to do when we're dealing with people. That's awful. Anyways, what I heard was that this generation of children who grew up in orphanages were among the people who rose up, like a large contingent of the people who rose up against Ceaucecu and led the revolution to destroy him. So the argument being presented, I think it was my contemporary history class, the argument being presented was, if he hadn't done this banning of abortion, banning of contraception, and the number of abandoned orphan children hadn't been as dramatic, would he have been removed from power? It's an interesting question. Anyways, abortion's it's a really bizarre conversation to have. I simply don't understand the benefit to us in making people, like, forcing people to have babies. Let's see now. If it was about the fetus and bringing it to term, then they would invest in help for single mothers and adoption programs, or guaranteed money and resources to raise them, not abandon them to life of poverty and abuse. But for some strange reason, the interest stops when the child is born. Then it's the parent's job, and strangely, father's rules are a gap. No laws looking for the father to ensure they look after it. Let the church take care of them. I mean, look at the success the church has had with children with regards to residential schools and priest pedophilia. I'm feeling pissy today, Gene. I get you. I am Canadian. I'm feeling pissy myself. I got some stuff that I can say about, the recent finding at that residential school of 215 to 235, whatever the number is, Indigenous children who were murdered over the course of that school existing. And we as a society go, oh my goodness, that's terrible. How could such a thing happen? Look in the other residential schools. There was a bunch of them. I guarantee you there's a lot more mass graves out there, because when we create a system, 150,000 children ripped from their homes, 4,000 deaths so far and counting. Yeah, it turns out when we take children out of their environment and raise them in a religious or governmental system, typically we fuck up hard and we do all kinds of terrible things, and that's just fucking facts. Like, I don't know what to tell anyone. The concept of the residential school program and the way that people were snatching, like the kids, they were saying the youngest kid that they found, they anticipate was about 3 years old. What 3-year-old is in school? Simple. One that you can take away from its parents so that you can kill off the Indian inside it. Calgary Board of Education is 125,000 students in 245 schools. If there were 4,000 deaths, there'd be a shitstorm and something would be done immediately. Abso-fucking-lutely. Even if you said 4,000 deaths over the course of 60 years, which is supposedly going to, make us all feel like, oh, well, it's not as bad then. No, it's a genocide. And if the regular school board was guilty of that, a lot of people would be freaking out. People, please stop erasing history by renaming schools in this cancel culture must stop. Fuck UCP, fuck Kenny. I'm assuming that you actually are supportive of the renaming of schools because of the terrible assholes that the schools are named after. Like Langevin, we just renamed the Langevin school. People are so fucked up when it comes to time. 60 years is half a human generation. Totally. Beau of the Fifth Column had a video I talked about, and he was talking about an email he got from somebody who was saying, my grandmother, it was a black person, my grandmother doesn't want to take the vaccine because of the Tuskegee experiment and stuff. And his whole point was, that's not ancient history. That happened probably in your grandmother's lifetime. And your grandmother probably has a bunch of reasons to be extremely distrustful of science and the medical community. So no, I can't tell her that she's wrong. I can about the existence of those things. I can only tell her that things are not quite the same anymore. Facetious sarcasm didn't come through. Yes, I thought that was the case. I am Canadian because I know you and yeah. Please stop erasing history by renaming schools. Cancel culture. It's funny because the Langevin School originally was called I think it's Riverside School. And then they renamed it. They were like, hey, here's a guy who's guilty of a lot of hate crimes. Let's name the school after him. So they've just reverted back to referring to it as the Riverside School, which 100% is awesome. We're coming for you, Sir Johnny MacDonald. I know you're Canada's first prime minister and just a hell of a guy. But you are a white supremacist and a piece of shit, and your school needs to lose its name. What they took from that was that don't change school names and cancel culture. Not 4,000 children murdered and 150,000 ripped from homes. What the flying fuck are you talking about? You fucking UCP fucktard. Yeah, boggles my fucking mind that anyone can look at the actions of someone like Langevin or Sir Johnny MacDonald. Any number of there's a lot of examples of this just in my hometown of Calgary. And be like, no, that's cool. We should remember the good things that genocidal maniac did. That's why we have the Hitler School. No, we don't have a Hitler School, and we shouldn't have a Hitler School. And if there was a Hitler School, I'd be saying maybe we should consider changing the fucking name. We've done so much damage to our Indigenous population over the years. This is, they talk about reconciliation. This is the start of, I think, listening. Not listening and like going, but what can be done? But actually understanding where those hurts come from and saying, I get that. I'm gonna do something. It's a small something, but it's a something. That's what we should be doing. Sugar Ray, my uncle says that if Kenny doesn't want to change names and take down statuses, then we Indigenous people get to write the new plaques for them. Or take down statues, sorry. That I would be 100% supportive of. I can just imagine, you bring your kids, and kids, here's a statue of Sir Johnny MacDonald, and it's like the great big beautiful looking plaque, and it's like, this genocidal motherfucker. The name of a school and a statue is well-known educating tool of history. Most people learn their history from these things. Not. The argument that the sanctity of a statue or a school or whatever is that it's a part of history and that we should teach the whole story, but we're not fucking teaching the whole story. The education I got around residential schools was this. There were residential schools. Some bad things happened, but don't worry about it. Hey, here's candy. I'd love to see how quickly these people would change their tunes if I made a school called the Stalin College of Being Based and Doing Crimes. Fuck yeah. I would go to that school. Not because I'm a Stalinist, but I'm all about learning how to be more based and do more crimes. At my age, being based is very difficult because I'm an old man, but fuck, absolutely. Indigenous population of Canada, 5% give or take. Indigenous population of Canada prisons, 30% give or take. Trauma yields issues, who would have thought? I'm sick of this shit. 1830 to 1997 is 166 years of genocide and oppression. I'm both angry and ashamed. Get it fucking done now. Those numbers are just the residential school program. I did a video a couple weeks ago where I went through Treaty 7 and I talked about the rules that were established, that the conversation that we had to say, like, this is what white settlers in this territory is going to look like, and how we just didn't live up to our end. The whole push behind why Indigenous people were looking to have this treaty. Well, there's a bunch of reasons, but one of the big ones was the need for exploring an agrarian environment. And the crown was like, yeah, we can help. We'll give you money, we'll give you plows, we'll give you cattle, we'll give you all kinds of cool shit. We will totally help. Don't worry about it. Here, go live here. And oh yeah, we didn't get around to it, so y'all are starving to death. I hope that's okay. Since the very fucking beginning, we've been failing in our word. This was the whole thing that I was trying to sort of put my thoughts together when it came to when everyone was up in arms about Palestine and Israel, and how I really feel like if you're defending Israel, you need to have that conversation with your Indigenous friends so that they can see where you stand on this subject, because I feel like a lot of Indigenous people might not be 100% okay with people who are like, hey, yeah, it's a colonizing force that is forcing people into very small spaces and then slowly chipping away at that space, and also making their healthcare access, their access to their voice, all of these, like there's some serious similarities here. So when Canadians are like, I don't support Israel, they need to look at deeper at the actions that they're doing to the Indigenous communities here. And when they're like, I do support Israel, they need to understand that what they're saying is, I'm supporting something genuinely terrible that we've done and continue to do, and that's not okay, and get called on that. I get when right-wing people are supportive of Israel and Israeli stuff, because contrary to what people will like to hear, the actions of Israel in Palestine are not the Judaism. They are the actions of a political group of people who are oppressing another group. And as long as we keep that tie between anti-Semitism and anti-Israeli Zionist government working in that space, to me that's really problematic. Because it just dismisses any argument. I feel like it's really dangerous to conflate the two. If you say anything bad about Israel, oppression of Palestinians, therefore anti-Semitism. Exactly. I can't even think how to put it, but there's something about the idea of dismissing all argument that Israel could do bad things, and saying therefore any statement to that effect is anti-Semitic. I feel like that is a slap in the face to actual Jewish people. I would hope that Jewish people the world over, whether living in Israel or otherwise, would want the message of Judaism to be associated with the teachings of the Torah and what all the other things is, and not with the direction of a government. Because governments, I don't know if you know this, sometimes they suck shit. I know. I'm a radical. It's what I do. I'm so rad. Walk into a Palestinian home, declare it's yours, toss them out on the street, then Hamas rockets, then response, then peace, and anything that doesn't say Israel good, Hamas bad, and point to the facts of is anti-Israel or anti-Semitic. Fucking stupid. Totally. The other thing that I really think is important to understand is, there are good people on both sides, but so the fuck what? There are bad actions on both sides. One of those groups is a massive nuclear power city-state thing, whatever, monster. The other is a bunch of people struggling to survive. If change has to happen and one of the sides has to, take a little bit on the chin and say, hey, let's work through this, it's the people with the fucking power, right? When we went into Oka, the whole Oka story is fascinating to me, because it was sold to me as a kid that these indigenous people just didn't want nobody coming in and hey, 100 messages today with Restream chat. Hi-yo! The argument was that the indigenous people just, we're not interested in having white people on this land that they claim as theirs. And then you read the details behind it, and it's not that they claim it's theirs. It's fucking theirs. At some point, the Catholic Church was like, hey, we're going to use this little bit. You can fuck off. And they didn't like it, but they were like, well, what are we going to do about it? And then the Catholic Church was like, let's sell this to fucking golf, whatever the fuck. And the company making the golf course was like, cool, like, we'll set up a golf course. And the indigenous people were like, that's our fucking land. Like, you can't give it away, you can't sell it. It's our fucking land. You were on it unlawfully. Fuck off on out of here. And we sent in troops, right? To me, I see strong parallels. One side is literally dressed like stormtroopers, and the other like the Rebel Alliance. Everybody in the U.S. is so brainwashed by Disney, you'd think it'd be easier for them. You would think that. The amount of really progressive messaging that we're exposed to from childhood through things like Disney and everything that's not PragerU kids should lead us in a direction where we're capable of saying, maybe this isn't right. Maybe I'm not okay with this whole ethnic cleansing business. Even the news that we consume, often, whether intentionally or otherwise, is accurate on describing some of the things. Like, in my life, there was ethnic cleansing in the Romania, I think. Certainly the Kurds in the Kurdish Iraqi war. We know ethnic cleansing is bad. But then when you see it, you're like, but that's not ethnic cleansing. No, because they're our friends, and our friends wouldn't ethnically cleanse. Who knows? Yeah, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Serbia, Armenia. We've had all kinds of this. Rwanda, right? The Tutsis and the Hutus, which was entirely based on, at some point, some honky was like, well, you're lighter, so you're a Hutu or Tutsi, whichever of the two. The Uyghurs, definitely. And just uttering that word tells me that I'm about to be flooded by a raid of angry tankies who will try to blow up my house, but that's okay. Turns out the Uyghur genocide is a bad thing. I'm willing to go on the record for that. We're not picking up what we're being told here when it doesn't suit our interests. Ethnic cleansing is like, there's really not a time when you can be like, well, but that ethnicity really did need some cleansing. Like, that's not a thing. Apparently Uyghurs are indigenous to that part of the world. Another indigenous genocide. Who knew? Yeah, my understanding is, and I'm no expert, but from what I've read about the Uyghur genocide, is essentially it's this corner place of China that is close to Turkey. The people who are indigenous people who live there are light-skinned. They are very, very, genetically, they would be like the same sort of, Turks kind of thing. And, the shit that's happening there is fucking unreal. Yeah, just the whole thing. Where did we start on this one? I want to make sure I got whatever thoughts. We were talking about abortion, and that somehow landed us here. I think I did sort of talk through what I wanted to say about abortion. I will never have an abortion. Largely because I lack the capacity to make babies out of my tummy.